Thank you very much. And thank you for including this presentation. This presentation is really about looking at how we use Moodle in our teaching, or how students engage in Moodle in their learning. And Rajneel is sitting right there. He's a bit shy to come to the front, but Rajneel's done the data mining and helped us the analysis and so on. Wave, Rajneel, so everybody knows who you are. Thank you. This presentation is not going to answer any questions for us. It's actually going to raise questions, which I really do not have the ability to answer myself, and I think we need a lot more work to be able to answer some of them. So just bear with me as I raise the questions as we go along. Essentially, I will introduce yet another time this morning, USP's aspiration for global leaders, to be one of the global leaders in ICT-driven education, the audit of Moodle, why we did this audit, and preliminary results and the questions raised, and then looking at some very preliminary learning analytics of a particular first-year fully online course, raising even more questions, and then highlighting some of the things that we may need to do, or we do need to do as an institution to really get on and proceed the way we want to in our journey for global leadership. Okay, we all know that, starting this morning, our aspiration. Like the Vice Chancellor said this morning, this is not an option for us, so we have to do this. And why we have to do this, again, just to remind ourselves, we need to provide access to our students in our member countries, wherever they're located, and beyond, of course. We need to do this because of our geographical spread and the diversity of our students. But more so, or not more so, in addition to that, we also need to cater for students in the 21st century. What does that mean? Students today learn very differently, are used to very different technologies, and think quite differently from students of the previous centuries. So all these are demands on us, and we have to address them. So when we looked at Moodle usage, as we know, we say all 100% of our undergraduate courses are on Moodle. And when we looked at them in the first semester this year, that was 283 courses that were running at the time in the first semester. And I think we did this analysis 6 weeks into the semester when all the learning and teaching was on full throttle, so we know that everything was being used. And this is what we found by faculty, and then overall. The italics things are really just the course management activities that are going on, and at the bottom from weekly discussions onwards are the actual learning tools. So we can see that the most commonly used course management activities are the course outline and news forum, as expected, followed by course notes. And then when you look at the actual activities here, I should be able to point, right? When we look at these, we find that the most common of those is the weekly discussions. Now, if you look at the commonly used tools, and we say commonly in inverted commas because if you really look at this, there's not a lot of things happening. Right? So we can't say these are commonly used tools because they're not. They're just sort of sitting there. So, okay, these are about course management. We start looking at about there, and the most commonly used one is the forum, as we saw with the data before, followed by quiz. You can see also that the online courses are using a bit more engaging than the other ones, than the print and face-to-face and blended. Blended's not too bad, but there you go. Now, since the forum is really the most commonly used tool, and sitting at about 58% of the courses using that, when we actually look at how the staff are responding to students posting on the forum, we find that really only about just over 20% of the time staff respond in a timely manner to postings that students put up in the forum. Isn't that a bit scary? By timely, we mean within 1 to 3 days, because depending on the nature of the posting, 1 to 3 days seemed to be acceptable. And then, really, between this and this, we're looking at less than 50% response from the lecturers, in most cases, except for online and blended. The others are all sitting here. In some cases, the lecturers never respond. So while we think we're using this particular function, are we really using it effectively? So this raises a number of questions, and I'm going to leave the questions there and take any comments or suggestions on that. Are we really using these discussions forums properly? Do we really know what value we want to get out of them? If we're not really using it, then should we even have them in the course? It raises do we need to increase interactions in the discussion forums? And if so, then how do we do this? Engaging in discussion forums is really an art in itself when you think about it, because to engage students, you need to be able to create a situation where students become interested. At the moment, the postings are generally students asking questions and expecting answers. But that's really not active learning, is it? Dave, you've got a question for me. Yes. Sure, absolutely.
If I imagine a 20% response rate for every one of the discussion posts where 80% of them I never respond to, that almost shapes up to be a pretty healthy course, because that means you've got...
Yep.
Was I not loud enough? Because that means that you've got people who are answering people's questions and collaborating together. You may have somebody who is doing an ongoing reflexive writing project. But that kind of number out there without any context to it leads me to, I don't know what you can do with that information. It totally depends. If you're talking about the news forum, a Q&A forum, I guess I understand. But a collaborative forum, those numbers are really difficult to use as a way to, structure policy.
Yeah, thank you, because I will talk a little bit about that later when we actually look at the use of the forum. Most of it is really one way or one-to-one with the teacher engagement only, and I think that's what the context of this at the moment. Any other questions, comments, observations? No? Yep.
Thank you for raising the issues. I think this is the right time to do all of this. And I'd be also interested in the context with regard to student feedback and, you said you'd raise the questions, and I think I'm raising a question too, rather than not just at you, but I think for all of us as educators is when we look at the discussion forums, of course there's the design of a discussion forum and what you want it to be used for, whether you're going to have it assessed or not, and how do you do that. And then, of course, there is just as Dave said, the opportunity for students, particularly studying at a distance, to be able to engage even with each other, share learning experiences, questions, clarifications, and even just, things like how's the weather over there. I mean, that in itself is a loaded question because they start to learn about somebody else's location which is not theirs. Thank you.
Absolutely. Okay, now when we decided to audit the courses, this was what was created as guidelines. We were going to categorize them in three different ways. Courses that showed Moodle presence, where it was mostly used for content sharing or publishing, and so the course page was pretty static. Then Moodle supported, which had a little bit of the course management tasks included, and note sharing, and now making announcements and so on. Fairly static. Well, depending. It could be fairly static, or it could have a little bit more activity, depending on. I think there's a whole range, isn't that, in the second category, probably. The third one is where what would normally be called a fully engaging and participation type course, using several tools. So when we did that, we found this. That's all the 223 courses, but some of the courses had more than one shells if they were in two different modes, then some of them had two different shells for them. So that's a little more than 223. Anyways, these results that you see for the face-to-face, blended and print look reasonable. Nothing alarming seems to come out to you. However, when you look at the online courses, you'd expect them all to be sitting here because they're fully online. But 57.7% of the courses are sitting in this category. And Rajneel will correct me if I'm wrong, these are really the courses that were developed much earlier. And so I think one of the issues may well be that they haven't really been revised to bring it in line with the more recent use of Moodle, perhaps. But really, that is a worry. So again, are our online courses truly online? What does it mean? Are we supporting our people to really develop high-quality online courses? What are the quality assurance processes that are currently there to ensure that online courses are really, truly online? We do, by the way, have some fantastic online courses which we think are really good, which have had very, very good external review reports. So we're not saying that they're all bad. I think what we're saying is we need to take stock and we need to look at particularly the courses that were developed prior to maybe 2010 that need to have a really serious look at their effectiveness as online courses. Just wanted to share with you a couple of slides where we just dug in a little bit and looked at a first-year course which was fully online and compared it with the same course offered in the same semester, parallel, face-to-face, and just did some analysis. The first one is, when we compared the coursework mark with the completion rate, the coursework is out of 50, and the completion rate of all the activities in the course, in the online course. And it had activities like notes, it had homework, quizzes, what else? Tests, assignments. So all of those activities combined, when we looked at completion rates against how they did in the coursework. Now, remember, not all of them were assessed. We found this kind of a relationship. Not very strong. Yeah? Statistics, people? Yeah. Okay. When we then looked at the final exam, and this is just the final exam paper that we're talking about, final exam against coursework in an online course, and wanted to see whether there was any correlation, Found a very weak correlation. .28. Yeah. This is an online course, the same course online. The same course offered in the same semester, same examination paper, by the way, final exam. We look at a much better correlation. Yeah? I'm not going to say whether one course is worse than the other. My questions are going to raise a number of other issues. Rajneel.
The online course that you are looking at for the final exam, was that the final exam was also online?
No, it was the same paper.
So what's
paper-based.
So what's the definition of an online course?
Our definition of an online course that Senate has approved has 80% online, 20% can have 20% face-to-face. Our component in this course is that.
So
we haven't yet developed a system to run completely online exams because there are other issues around it which the university has to deal with right now.
So how can then you say that the final exam for this online is online?
I'm not saying the final exam is online.
How's the comparison then?
Okay, I will tell you the comparison. The comparison, Rajni, is about learning. Yeah? The assumption there is that learning is taking place and assessment is assessing one's learning. Right? Now, a mathematician will tell me whether I'm wrong or right here. Thank you. Now, if you are assessing in one way, in one mode, assessing in another way, in another mode, they're both assessing learning. How the learning takes place in that case is irrelevant. Now, the final exam also assesses learning. In one particular case, learning is taking place in a different way. In the other one, it's taking place in a different way. But learning is not, it doesn't mean that you do a paper online that you will assess a different kind, that your assessment is going to be different. The learning is going to be different. An assessment is an assessment. Correct?
No.
Yes. My mathematician friends tell me it's correct.
I understand that. Let me give you another example of a situation where common practice doesn't play that out. If you look at the way that people do English, the practicing for English tests, by that argument, practicing at random in English is equivalent to studying how to beat the English test, which is what most people do. People test the English test over and over and over again so they become better test takers in the exact same modality that the test is going to be given. If you take students and you have them run online and all the work they do is online, and then you say, you're going to do the rest of the testing on paper, you have not trained them. You've trained them to do everything with one idea in mind and one sort of repetition in mind, and then you're moving them to a totally different modality. I don't think that that's equivalent because the testing is not neutral. If you practice doing a certain kind of testing in a certain way, I mean, we've seen this in all of the English testing. If you practice testing in a very specific way, you're going to be better at it because testing itself doesn't measure, in most cases, learning. It measures your ability to do the test.
Well, I would not necessarily agree with that at all because I've seen enough work that talks about learning taking place and the testing mechanism is quite secondary to the testing of learning. Now, this is not an English test, thank goodness. This is a test in science. This is a science paper, so I can tell you that learning is taking place in a different way, and it's not about learning. And then these same students are doing 3 other courses where they do paper-based anyway. So this, I don't think it's a shock to the system. The important thing is, though...
We are actually looking 1 or 2 more questions, and then we've got to move to the next person. So,
right.
But
so very
to have the questions going while it's on. I think that's a better model.
Okay. Well, those are the questions that we think we are raising. Are we really shifting in terms of learning? Are we really shifting from teaching the course in an online environment to really providing that environment for learning. I think to us, that's the biggest question. The other question is, are our students really ready to learn independently in the first year? This is a first-year course. And again, that raises another major issue, I think. But there we go. There are lots of uncertainties, including perhaps the issue that Rajneel raised. Maybe that is an issue. I don't know. I haven't seen evidence of it. But that could well be an issue. And then finally, I think as an institution we have a lot to do. We really need to think very, very carefully about where we're wanting to go, particularly now that we're at this juncture where we're wanting to go very significantly in technology-driven education. So I think a stocktake is what we're talking about. Thank you.